I'm George Galloway, and I present Kali Mahorra on Al Mayadeen television. Here we are in London. I speak my words freely, either in Parliament, on television, here on the streets of London. Kali Mahorra means free word. That's what I speak. So Kali Mahorra is a two-way conversation. Check it out on Al Mayadeen television. Welcome to Kali Mahorra with me, George Galloway, on Al Mayadeen television, coming to you from London, but discussing truly global events. I'm joined, as always, by an audience of distinguished experts and one or two enthusiastic amateurs like me. So, it's official. Mr. Lavrov, widely, maybe even universally regarded as the senior diplomat in the world, is persona non grata in England. He is not allowed to visit Britain. In fact, all diplomatic relations between Britain and Russia are now in a state of deep freeze, suspended, and who knows what is to come. The Cold War just might get a little bit hot. The proximate cause for this is that Russia is accused of not quite killing 2 Russians in England. But we recently had another foreign visitor who's killed rather more of his own people and the people of rather more than his own country. And yet, for the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, the deepest, the most lush of red carpets was rolled out. No persona non grata for a man who has doubled the number of beheadings by the sword in his country in the last year. No persona non grata for a man who is the war leader in a war against the poorest country in the Arab world, Yemen, which has killed tens of thousands of people by arms, most of them sold to him by countries like Britain and the United States. You might be getting a whiff of hypocrisy here, I hope so. But placed in jeopardy literally hundreds of thousands of Yemenis who are dying from cholera and mass starvation. In 2018, in the Arab world, potentially the richest part of the entire globe. Not only that, no persona non grata for the war leader financing, arming, and providing unlimited media air cover for the alphabet soup of fanaticism still murdering in Syria. The alphabet soup of Al-Qaeda, ISIS, look, I've forgotten them. There's that many of these organizations, these jayshes that carry the name, they say, blasphemy, if you ask me, of Islam in one form or another. Prince Mohammed bin Salman is 33 years old, yet he has unlimited power in his country. Or does he? All these relatives that he hung upside down from hooks in the Ritz-Carlton Hotel until they disgorged their ill-gotten gains so that he could trouser it along with his own ill-gotten gains, may yet be in a position to strike back. Who knows? Perhaps the National Guard, whose leadership has been so cruelly incarcerated and tortured, perhaps other power centers in Saudi Arabia, may yet strike back. None of that mattered to a British media now in ferocious overdrive against Russia, had a word to say against MBS. Mohammed bin Salman was the rock star, that's what they called him, a rock star prince who was changing Saudi Arabia. Just in case you didn't get the message from the mainstream media, they spent millions of pounds, presumably Saudi Arabia spent it, rather than the British government, though who knows. Millions of pounds on newspaper advertisements, gigantic, moving, electronic billboards, showing him in rather a handsome aspect, I must say, and telling us that he was the man who was liberating Saudi women. They didn't mention all the Yemeni women. They didn't mention the Syrian women. They didn't mention the Iraqi women. They didn't mention the Libyan women. They didn't mention any other women except those fortunate enough now to be driving their new cars, although I don't think it's even happened yet. I was on the BBC on the day of his arrival, linked up with, by satellite, a woman in Saudi Arabia who really did think MBS was a rock star. And her reason? She was that very afternoon about to take delivery of her Ford Mustang. Nice work if you can get it. I wouldn't mind a Ford Mustang myself. Now, has Saudi Arabia changed? Should we support this reformer? Or is it just lipstick on a, well, I better not say what I normally say, lipstick on a monster? Is it still a monster, or is that lipstick part of a genuine transformation? What will it mean for the Arab region? What will it mean for the people of Saudi Arabia, many of whom, for the first time in generations, are actually really rather poor and struggling to get by? Will all that change now that MBS is at the helm? And what will it mean for the West? Well, plenty of mullah, the West hopes, or they wouldn't be rolling out this red carpet. So Russia bad, Saudi Arabia good. Lavrov, Putin, we don't want even to see your faces. MBS, might we kiss your posterior, sire? That's the British way. That is the reason why we're called perfidious Albion. Let me throw to this distinguished audience, I've probably said more than enough. Professor, what would you like to say? MBS, rock star, or the same old, same old?
I didn't see him dancing, so I don't know how could he become a rock star. Anyway, this is obviously purely a propagandistic way of representing a man who came here to save himself, save Trump from the decline and the squeeze of the deep state in America by offering Britain a substantial amount of money over 10 years, 80 billion.
For Typhoons, yeah?
For Typhoons and other weapons, which are anyway worthless, because before that he had the Eurofighter of the past model. What's his name? I don't know. Anyway, that one in the Yamama deal, and they did not do anything good for them. The only thing they did is to killing more Yemenis, but not decide the war. Independent if it's a good war or a bad war, they cannot decide the war. Wars are decided by soldiers on the ground who will penetrate and take positions and control. This cannot be happening because the Saudi army is useless, cannot do this job, except maybe in Bahrain, oppressing the people by the National Guard, but really fighting in the mountains specifically, they are incapable. So my analysis is that bin Salman recognized that the green light he got last year, almost a year now in May, to invade Qatar and consume it, failed. The hope that things in Yemen may turn into the right direction failed. In Syria, he's declining, despite all the money spent on the various groups. And the agenda was obviously to cement power and extend the life of Saudi Arabia, which passed expiration date, because it doesn't belong in the 21st century, by having the American support, not American support really, the deep state, but the faction which may be called the Zionist globalization faction, which has adopted a populist demagogue like Trump. Also, Theresa May is most likely, but not certainly, in that camp, and she needs support because obviously the failure of last election, where she did not succeed. Secondly, the Brexit negotiations are not going well. The government is in disarray. She needs help, and she will pay back by supporting him further in Yemen, and maybe he can survive. So I think that's the whole thing, is that an attempt to survive and to turn the clock backwards and to turn the direction of history. My prediction is that this will fail. Neither this will help Theresa May to any great extent. It's a matter of months where Trump will be out or assassinated, most likely. And it's a matter only for weeks and months when the major world economy and the banking system will collapse. So that's always not going to change anything. The only thing is to buy some time for a regime which is past its expiration date. But let us see. Wait and see.
Dr. Haider?
I'll take the issue from different perspective, mainly economic and financial, which should really give us some more figures. And then if we estimate something, say the kingdom is really falling apart, then we have a reason why it's falling apart. The other issue will be the relationship, or the mutual relationship between the United Kingdom and Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. If I go back to the economy of the Saudi in the 80s or until the mid 80s, everything was okay, it was fine. The price of the oil was really going very high, and the kingdom sustained really a huge amount of money. But at that period of time, not much has been spent on the development, because in the 1980, government spending on the social services had stopped, and quite a lot of money started to disappear, and nobody can find an explanation. Another issue is there is exaggeration of the number of population in Saudi Arabia. And that, I think this is a deliberate number. So when they put the budget, they can justify it proportionally to the number of people. But this is like stay a mystery. In terms of some indices, employment is becoming very high in the kingdom. The number of foreigners is expanding as well. The process of the Saudization of the jobs in the country did not really succeed very well, and it makes one wonder, the amount of money has been spent on education, and for all those Saudi outside in the UK and the United States of America, which really worth billions. And at the end, you don't have qualified people to come and run your country. This is shameful. Take, for example, the budget for the military. Saudi Arabia at the moment is ranked like the 5th in the world. It is spending about $70 billion every year on a military equipment, or this is the military budget, which is really straightforward after the budget of the Russians. The Russians spend about 75. Saudi Arabia spent almost 68 billion, which is really, even more than Japan spent. The United States spent about 680 billion. But the amount of military equipment and airplanes, you find it's little compared, for example, to North Korea or South Korea. They spend less money in North Korea, and they have more number of planes and tanks and stuff like that.
This is because of corruption, isn't it?
Exactly. So after the 85, and now we're talking about 95 specifically, the budget has started to increase. The budget deficit has started to increase more, about 65% to the GDP, which is really, according to the International Monetary Fund, this is not an alarming, but it is almost touching the threshold, is the worrying. According to the IMF report, which was produced 2 years ago, August 2016, they said there are about 5 countries will collapse in the Middle East, and one of them is Saudi Arabia. So the vision now, 2030, 2020, of Mohammed bin Salman has been built on some ambitious target, and taking in consideration that the oil price will be about $75 a barrel. But according to the energy board, the World Energy Board, the consumption of the energy is decreasing, mainly the oil, because people now more depending on the gas and alternative energy. So the estimation of the International Monetary Fund that the oil price will contain mostly maximum on $50 a barrel, which really cannot achieve all the goals has been set up in this Mohammed bin Salman vision. Going back to the relationship with the United Kingdom, this is a mutual business relationship. And when somebody put like $100 billion on the table, even there were some whispering that the Queen has been forced to accept him or to receive him in her palace because of the 100 billion. Because they think, well, the Foreign Office was employing a lot of people in this campaign. You could see all the taxis carrying his photograph. He might be a rock, but not a star. This is
Trust me, it doesn't cost 100 billion to get in to see the Queen.
Exactly, but a lot of money has been spent.
You can knock a lot of zeros off that.
This is true. This is true. But anyway, when you have like 100 billion on the table, you will understand why this deal has happened. But don't forget the Yamama deal, Professor Masari said, it was one of the most corrupted deal happened in this country, which is really a shame. And the government stopped
Tony
it.
Blair stopped the police investigation of it.
Exactly,
just when it was about to bring charges. Dr. Jamal is, Jumay, beg your pardon.
I just would like to talk about Yemen because I'm from Yemen and this war in my country. I think from outside, we look at the war as a war from outside on Yemen, not a war in Yemen. And I would like to say that this war started in Yemen 6 months before the start of the actual war from outside, the so-called Asifat al-Hazm, or the determination storm. No one talk about the Houthis. No one talk about what they did in my country. No one talk about a legal elected president is being elected and being expelled outside the country. No one is talking about the crime of the Houthis, who are supported by the Iranians, by the way, according to the United Nations states or statements.
When did they say that? When did
you read the statements of the experts just a few weeks ago? Yes, you can go, George, you can go and read it.
And you will find. You said the United Nations. When did the United Nations say that?
The United Nations formed a committee by many experts who are supervising and watching the way of smuggling weapons to Yemen. And they said, frankly, that the missiles were found in Saudi Arabia and in some parts of Yemen were manufactured in Iran. This is clearly said on this statement. So no one is talking about this. It's just a war between no one except me. You didn't say it, George. You just mentioned, and I actually respect what you said about bin Salman or about Saudi Arabia or about the war in Yemen. This is your own opinion. But as a presenter of this program, I think if I were you, I would express two opinions, not only one direction of this opinion. Anyway, this is my opinion. I might be wrong.
Please don't tell me. Wrong. Please don't tell me how to present my show.
This is my opinion.
If you want to have a show, you can.
This is my opinion. Anyway,
have one.
Shall I continue?
Not yet. You've got a misconception here. This is Kalima Hurra. I give my Kalima Hurra, then you give your Kalima Hurra.
But I have the right to say...
I don't give two different Kalima Hurras. I just give my Kalima Hurra. So now you give me...
Okay, that's fine.
You give me yours.
That's fine, but I was thinking that you were a presenter.
No.
So...
I'm me. I'm George Galloway. And you've seen enough Kalima Hurras to know that.
That's fine. That's fine. So what I'm saying here is that there is a war inside Yemen, supported by the Iranians, by their Houthis puppets in the country, against the Yemenis, against the Arabs, against the Saudis, 6 months ago, before the Saudis being interfering into this war in Yemen. This is one issue. The other issue is about bin Salman being here. I'm not defending bin Salman. I'm not Saudi anyway. But he was welcomed, from my point of view, in London because he didn't poison anyone here. Yes, you could say that he were bombing Yemen. He was doing some, as some people saying, criminal war in Yemen or in Syria. This is an opinion. But the British government, they said what they said today because they accused the Russians of killing a Russian citizen who became maybe British citizen here
dead,
in
by
London.
the way,
Anyway,
so-
anyway.
He's not
he
dead.
has
Anyway.
his mother under arrest.
Who?
Mohammed bin Salman. His mother is under arrest in one of the villas, and she is not allowed to go out.
Okay,
of her
okay.
house.
I haven't
This is
heard
the
that.
challenge.
I
This
haven't
is the
heard that.
challenge. Yeah.
I haven't heard that.
You said he didn't poison anybody.
I haven't
Well,
heard that.
yeah.
Anyway,
No,
look,
where is your proof?
His wife-
Where is your proof?
his
Where is
mother.
your proof? Anyway, this is it's my turn now.
It's your turn,
So,
and
so
I think everyone watching
shall I-
this, I think no, I need to take a break, but you'll come back again.
okay. Did you mention what Assad is doing in Syria? Who is killing more than 500,000 of Syrian civilians in Syria? Is it Daesh? Is it ISIS? It's the airplane, the aircraft. It's the warcraft in Syria. It's the Russians. So you are now defending people who are committing war crimes in Syria and trying to say that there are some war crimes in Yemen, just like turn a blind, what you call it? A blind eye about what's going on in Syria. I think we must to be fair. We must be just. We should look at the issue from both eyes, not only one eye, and listen to issues using our two ears, not only one. Thank you.
You've done your job. I'm sure everyone will have seen it. I'll be right back. You're watching Kalima Horra with me, George Galloway, on Al Mayadeen Television, talking about the contrast in the British government's welcome of the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, MBS, the so-called rock star prince, and the attitude to Mr. Lavrov, who, on the day of this recording, has just been banned entirely from England. Widely divergent views present, and all of them will be heard. Let's take the gentleman in the second row, please.
I just wanted to respond to gentleman from Yemen. You are a Yemeni yourself, and hopefully you are concerned about your people. That's why you're here. You're trying to voice their concerns. But who is killing Yemenis? Is Iran killing Yemenis? Or Saudis killing Yemenis? You talk about Iranian missiles. Which missiles have been dropped on Yemenis? Is it Iranian missiles? Or is it Saudi missiles? But who's dropping the missiles on Yemenis? Who's killing Yemeni children? Who's killing Yemeni women? Is it Iranian missiles? How? Are you deluded? Because it's not, Iran is not dropping any bombs on your people. It is.
One at a time, please. Brother,
think that the Houthis are killing Yemenis?
Brother, you've
Before
done-
the Saudis came into this war.
It is Saudis that is sending fighter jets on your people, killing your people. It is Saudis that is
who
attacking.
gave you the right to respond?
It is.
Don't tell me how to run this show. That's your last warning.
Okay.
Okay?
That's fine. But
Speak on, please.
Well, you see, these are your principles. You don't even stay silent so I can speak to you and then you can speak back to me. So, who's killing your people? Who's killing Yemeni children? Who's killing Yemeni women? Who is attacking funerals? They're already grieving for their loss and they're still bombing them. Who is attacking hospitals? Who's attacking schools? They don't even consider there might be kids studying in the school. They don't consider there might be people in the hospital. They still attack their target and they still get it wrong. You know, they rely on foreign intelligence. They don't have their own intelligence. So they always keep on getting it wrong. And some countries in the West are using that in a way to get bribes from them, to tell them, okay, you're going to give more cash or buy more weapons, as we've seen it here in the UK, and as it happened with the US. You either pay more, you either buy more weapons, or we're going to make this a big issue, or we're going to take this to the media, or we're going to go after your 800 billion pounds of assets. Don't you really see that? This is
Let's take the gentleman in the front. I want to ask you something. The public relations blitz seeks to persuade that the prince is popular in Saudi Arabia, that he is freeing women to drive, to go to the cinema, and so on, that he's popular with young people because he is young himself, and that he's essentially a reformer and a modernizer, distancing himself, for example, from extremist interpretations of Islam and so on. Is there anything in any of these claims?
Anything in?
Is there anything valid about any of these claims?
I think, George, thank you very much. My name is Sahal Ali. I am a political and social commentator, and I really enjoy this wonderful program, Kalima Harra. Kalima Harra is widely viewed, and it will change the face of the world by giving people real picture. I'm not here to advertise, but to tell the reality. The last show was watched by 1.5 million Somalis. And I would like to thank the organizers. In response to your question, I have to touch a little bit about, is he a rock star or not? I think it is too early to make a comment on a man who came from nowhere. He jumped the queue and pushed himself into the line to the throne. And I think there are problems that are associated with that. We have seen, and clearly you covered this, him putting ministers and influential people and princes under house arrest. We have seen him trying to do what has never been done in Saudi Arabia, which means the word modernization is a risk-taking. Modernization means you are challenging the basis of the kingdom, on which the kingdom stands on, which is fundamental. The kingdom is generally the center of Islam, and anyone who is going to lead must strictly lead in line with the rules and regulations. By creating islands which are free from these laws would eventually put this future king on the spotlight. And at the moment, we may not know what is happening beneath the scenes. We have heard reports that there are bridges taken from their platforms and arrested for saying what they wanted to say, which were not in line with what the kingdom wants. I think by putting people like Prince Talal under house arrest, even though he's free now.
This is Walid bin Talal, one of the world's richest men.
And well-known global investor. I don't believe he's going to be sitting there without taking a revenge. Also, we have said recently high-ranking military officials losing their posts. All this is a film that we have to watch and see where it ends. But in response to the king's visit here, the warm welcome he receives reflects the British desperate for one thing: how to make money.
It wasn't a warm public welcome, was it?
The
public didn't get near him. He was warmly welcomed by the people he was going to give money to.
Definitely. I'd
warmly welcome anybody that was going to give me money.
Definitely. What I wanted to say in support of the program is that nobody gave a suspicious welcome, but we have seen the media fell under the influence of the money. The British want one thing from this conflict in the region. They want to sell their weapons. And I give you an example. In the first half of 2017, the United Kingdom, the British Army sales to Saudi Arabia hit 1.1 billion.
In 6
6
months.
In between January and June. And I think the irony of that, one of the British-made cruise missiles was used to destroy a ceramic factory near Sana'a, owned by a man who came here in 1988 and studied and returned it and built that factory. It took for the man to build the factory for 20 years, and it deployed 350 people. And the remnants of the weapon show it British manufacturer. Similarly, American-made cluster bomb, which you and I know is banned from use in battlefields, has been found on display in the outskirts of Sana'a. These people, whether we clamor for change or not, they will continue to sell their weapons because in the world we live today, morality has died. Money is above everything. So what is needed, and I like to help the gentleman, Yemen was nicknamed Arabia Felix, was a country that was known to be welcoming. People were very busy in agriculture. They were peaceful. Sadly, Saudi Arabia's intervention has turned Yemen into graveyard. I think it first started in air bombardment, followed by a blockade. Then we have seen deployment of ground troops. And when you watch closely what is happening, every day we see civilian targets hit hospitals, schools, and even internally displaced camps were destroyed. So where are the people who used to value human rights? Where have they gone? They are silent because the petrodollars have silenced them.
Yeah.
The petrodollars have silenced them.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Let's move on. Very powerful. No, someone who hasn't spoken yet, and then we'll come back. Yes, sir, please.
Thank you. I'd like to say what is shameful and disgraceful is that thousands of people are dying of starvation. There's a famine just a few hundred miles from one of the richest capital cities in the world. And the reason there's a famine is because last year the Saudis deliberately targeted that small section of Yemen that is arable land. We all know Yemen is mountain, desert, but 25% is arable. They deliberately targeted that land to ensure there would be famine this season. Now, what kind of callous and calculating regime could do that? And why is there no condemnation? And why are the human rights people not in uproar about it?
It's quite risky, isn't it? Because, a decent proportion of the Saudi population is itself of Yemeni origin. And obviously there are Yemenis who support the Saudi perspective on this, but they're taking a risk that the Yemeni origin Saudi citizens themselves are unmoved by mass starvation, mass cholera, mass casualties. Don't you think, Professor, that's a bit of a risk internally in Saudi Arabia?
Let me just clarify something of history. We should not, if we invoke history, like, for example, 6 months before the Saudis started their war, so-called the storm of the determination or something like that the Houthi did some atrocities and so on. Let me go 6 years back, or like 16 years back. The Houthis is a small tribe, part of Hamdan, who have very humble demands from the central government in Yemen, which is quite corrupt and headed by a man who regarded himself as the best fox in the world, and he ended like foxes, shot down. Anyway, they wanted roads, hospitals, and so on, like many other Yemeni tribes. And the Azaydi, like a good fraction of the Yemeni, I don't know if it's a majority or the minority, maybe they are less than the majority, if we take South Yemen also in the picture, because South Yemen is mostly Shafi'i.
The majority of North Yemen, though.
But the majority of North Yemen may be Zaidi, which is a very mild sect of Islam anyway, that's not an issue. They were in confrontation with the regime. Then the Saudis supported the regime against them when they became more rebellious and when their grievances were heard. Some of their leaders were influenced by Iran ideologically, and they found refuge in Iran. And Iran supported them for whatever reason, good reason or bad reason, but that's the reality. Supported them essentially media-wise and so on. There was no weapons at that time. Then the Saudis attacked them. There was air bombardment. And amazingly, the Saudi armies were defeated and the Houthi entered in Saudi Arabia, like they're doing now. Then there was a settlement. And then Saudi Arabia financed the Houthis to attack the Muslim Brotherhood, which is in some kind of coalition with the party of Ali Abdullah Saleh Affash. And that party is more, intellectually, mostly Ali Abdullah is more a Ba'athi. But he's a fox. He's nothing. He's just a man who's lining his own pockets. He has no really devoted ideology in that sense, or any deep-seated ideology, most likely. God knows, he's dead. He is facing his Lord. to exterminate and finish the Muslim Brotherhood as a part of Abdullah's campaign to finish the Muslim Brotherhood. Why he's finishing them? Maybe I'll get an opportunity to mention that. Actually, he took their bay'ah, their oath of allegiance, about 30 years ago to be the king of Saudi Arabia in the future. Now he's paying them back by kicking their butt. Anyway, then they moved the Houthis. The Saudis, they moved the Houthis against the central government. So the story is very much longer. If we go even deeper, we go in the 60s with the coup d'etat, when the Saudis, backed by the British and the Jordanian army. At the time, the Saudi army was nil. It is nil now, but at that time it was nil, nil, nil. Only the Jordanian army saved the day, but ultimately Saudi Arabia was defeated in the sense Abdel Nasser was defeated, but Saudi Arabia was defeated, and the Yemeni Republic established itself against the wish and grievance of the Saudi royal family, and they never accepted that, and they wanted to topple it. So the issues are very old. We should not go into history. The current situation, the Saudi atrocities in Yemen are very clear, and the Houthi and anybody else who is attacked by somebody else may regard himself legitimate to get weapons from everywhere to survive, to protect himself. Concerning the reforms and so on, the problem with Bin Salman, actually, this is the philosophy of Salman. Salman is a man who is...
The father or the son?
The king, the nominal king. Some people claim he's completely senile now, but I don't think he's to that extreme. That one has already an ideology since the 80s, because his close circle of advisors, led by a man called Turki al-Hamad, a philosopher, secular philosopher, with all respect, that a modern state cannot tolerate, actually any state cannot tolerate a church in itself. Either the state dominate or the church dominate. You know that from the European Middle Ages. So he suggested the Saudi religious establishment is like a church, which is true. It is organized, structured like a church, as bad as the medieval Spanish Inquisition. That must be subdued, which is with a reasonable current of history, and also is rationally defensible. So he has to do that. On the other hand, Saudi Arabia is established by this church. Actually, the church is the one who established the state 200, 300 years back. And that legitimacy was the base. And they give the church free hand, oppressing the people, prosecuting them, prosecuting women, etc., under the name of Islam, which has nothing to do with Islam. According to my point of view, they have another point of view, but we are ready for the debate. And the debate is ongoing for 20, 30 years. That's another issue. So now, he recognized that will not continue this way. So he wanted now the people who have been oppressed, women, to appease them the easy way, allowing driving, which should not have been prohibited in the first place. Actually, it was not prohibited until the 70s. I saw women driving in Riyadh in the 60s. Given these token reforms, which I wonder why the West is obsessed with that. It's a question, what is their obsession with this? I think it is the art of picking up certain things and exaggerate them. Like, for example, Amnesty International, talking about human rights organization, they made hell and heaven about a woman who was killed unjustifiably in Algiers, but the 100,000 tortured and killed in the desert, they didn't find except a footnote. There is some kind of fundamental issues.
Well, look, identity politics is very important in the West, Professor. The rights of gay people, and now even the rights of transgender people, and gender issues, racial issues, and so on. These are, in the West, very, very important. We'll come back, of course, to all the main players here after the break. You're watching Kalima Hurra with me, George Galloway, discussing MBS, the rock star prince, who's recently been in London, which is not something you'll be able to say about Mr. Lavrov. Let's take the gentleman in the middle there. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, George. My name is Duala Yusuf, and I'm from Somalia. Let me say one thing to the audience and to the public and to the Muslim world. I think blaming each other as a Muslims, I feel shame. Whether we talk about the princess or whether we talk in Yemen or anything, we see the Muslims are dying everywhere in many parts around the world. And I always blame to the Muslims because they don't respect each other. You don't see, the Western children are dying in their country. You don't see American are dying their children in the streets of anywhere. What I would say tonight is why the Muslims are blaming and killing each other, either in Yemen and Saudi Arabia, either in Somalia, either in Pakistan, either in Iran. What's wrong with the Muslims? They're always against each other, shouting each other. I don't know what's wrong with the Muslims. This is, whether they become Al-Qaeda, whether they become ISIS, whether they're bombing each other. What you see, the flesh and the blood of the Muslims are everywhere. So my question is, what is wrong with the Muslims? That's the only message I want to say.
In the United States, the children in the schools are being slaughtered in large numbers by their own people. So I'm not sure we can blame Islam for that. Let's take a look, before I bring you in, at what the British public out on the street thought of these matters.
What benefits is the UK pursuing by making close relationship with Saudi Arabia?
It's a selfish economical benefit, and just to tell the world that anywhere that they still in sort of in control. It's more sort of money, sort of investment actually right now, but this investment, so-called investment anyway, mainly sort of an arms sale and other sort of goods and stuff actually, which is not good anywhere.
Yeah, I think Saudi Arabia and UK have common interests. They were fostering these relationships and also their common benefits for both of the countries.
السعودية موصومة بالإرهاب وموصومة بحربها على اليمن. كل هذه الأمور لن تكون بمردود وفائدة على بريطانيا، خاصة وأن سمعة السعودية في الحضيض لارتكابها جرائم حرب في اليمن ولتدخلها في البحرين ولقضايا أخرى. أعتقد أن هذه لن تكون هناك فائدة بقدر ما يكون هناك ضرر كبير على بريطانيا.
Do you think that the UK has any benefits in having close relationships with Saudi Arabia?
Yeah, I do, especially with sort of Brexit happening. I think it's useful to sort of expand their international relations now more than ever.
If UK can, get few contracts, I think they're managing their ports, The strategy of Saudi Arabia is they're opening their doors for the trade and businesses,
Do you know about the UK selling billions of pounds worth of armament to Saudi Arabia?
Yeah, which not really great, but I don't think we're the only country that's sort of doing it either. Yeah.
If Saudi wants weapons and UK is selling it, it's okay, the funds are going to come in, they're going to get into the government and it's going to get into good spending, so healthcare and education, so which is a good thing. I don't mind. It's up to them how they use it, but there is no difficulty in selling it, right?
The question is how much outcome or income we will get from these sales. It should be how it will lead to the respect of the human rights, it will lead to the stability and so on. And up to now it shows that this selling of arms is leading to more intention, it's leading to more killing, it is leading to more violation of human rights in general, and at the same time it will create more conflicts.
Actually, just as a note, it is illegal to sell weapons in Britain if those weapons are to be used for either internal repression or external aggression. I always wonder what other purpose these weapons could possibly have. Let's take the gentleman at the back.
Just firstly, I would like to just touch up on the Saudi and Yemen conflict. There's two personal. The war is basically the Yemen is a battlefield, and it's a personal war between Saudi and Iran. Iran is intimidating Saudi. Saudi is using their strength on the Yemeni people, Yemeni civilians, like the children and what some of the audience here has mentioned. And to reflect back on what the gentleman here at the front said in terms of Ali Abdullah Saleh being a fox. Ali Abdullah Saleh, in my opinion, he's built up Yemen, the infrastructure. He's made Yemen something out of nothing. Just before he came to power, Yemen was had absolutely nothing in terms of economy, in terms of education, healthcare, and so on. Ali
Did
Abdullah
it have much when he left?
Did he have what? That's the point I'm
I mean,
making.
he was there 33 years.
That's the point I'm making. As soon as Ali Abdullah Saleh has stepped down from power, all these conflicts happen. Parties started to get involved.
How was Yemen doing when he stepped down? As far as I could see, not that great.
Well, it's because he had the mind and the brain power to control all these parties, those political parties, and Daesh and the Ikhwan and the Muslim Brotherhood.
By the way,
but just to call him a fox is just, I think, is a bit over the top.
I don't know. Fox in English is a description of.
He called himself. He called himself.
I'll never forget his courage
sticks.
in voting no to the invasion of Iraq.
Yeah.
So I salute his memory for that.
Yeah.
Go on, finish your point.
Just last point. As I said, he even said it himself before he died. Allah yarhamah. Before he died, he said, "I'm the head. I'm the dancer on the heads of snakes." And I think that defines Ali Abdullah Saleh in general. And that's my point. Thank you.
Okay, let's take this young lady at the front. It's important we get women speakers.
Yeah, hi, my name's Hannah and I'm here from the Arab Organisation of Human Rights in the UK. And I think that the recent visit has shown just how the British establishment, particularly Theresa May, is prepared to put profit in front of people's lives. This has been very, very stark, considering that there is mass opposition to the continued sales of arms to the Saudi regime on the accounts of the war crimes that are being committed in Yemen, as we have heard. The specific targeting of civilians and bombardment of vital infrastructure and not allowing aid to come through, all of these things do amount to war crimes, and I think we are complicit in them. We have to look at how we are responsible for the sale of our arms, but also within Yemen we have to look at the fact that we're not just selling arms, we are supplying military advisors as well in terms of intelligence and where that lies. So we're not complicit, we are active in that means, in my belief, in the war in Yemen. I'd like to pick up on the point that you were saying about food shortage. We know that over 8 million people are in direct need of food now. They don't know where their next meal is going to come from in Yemen. 21 million or more are food insecure, and millions are malnourished. When we have systematic targeting of the supply of food, then this, in my eyes, is genocide. It's not famine is a natural thing. This is because of drought or disease that kills your cattle. When people are made to starve as a weapon of war, then this is a war crime, and that accounts to genocide.
The gentleman behind, and then the gentleman there in the middle.
Thank you, George. James Thring, Ministry of Peace. I wanted to clear the air about how this began. If you remember, General Wesley Clark said last year that he'd been told several years ago that 6 or 7 Muslim countries were going to be militarily occupied by the United States, and Yemen was one of them. Now, the others, like Iraq and Libya and Syria, are already under a different kind of attack, but it's the same bundle of people running the United States who have this plan to roll back the Muslim world if it's a threat to their protege in the Middle East, i.e. the occupiers of Palestine. And it's all to do with their hegemony in the Middle East. They want to destroy any country that's, for example, supported by Iran, because Iran is their #1 enemy now, and the Iranians are clearly supporting the Houthis, because from a human rights point of view, that's what they should be doing. The Houthis are the people who are suffering most from the Saudi attacks.
I think everybody's suffering from the Saudi attacks. The gentleman there.
Yes, thank you, George. My name's Fra Hughes. I'm from Belfast. I'm not an expert, but part of the history that I would be aware of is that Britain actually created the House of Saud and created Saudi Arabia in the Middle East. I agree with a lot of the people in the audience that I believe...
We're also ruling in Yemen until the Beatles were almost finished.
Well,
this is not ancient history.
No, it's the 1960s. It's not that long ago, you know. With Saudi Arabia, to me, it just seems to be a regional power play. Saudi Arabia sees itself as a big player on the international stage. They've been very, very, very close to Britain ever since they were first brought into being. I understand they've come over here. I take it as political coverage for Mohammed bin Salman in order to cover some of the crimes that he's doing. So the regional power play is on behalf of the West, I believe, and on behalf of Israel. Nobody's really touched on that, but you know, the demonization of Iran, Syria, Lebanon, I know this has been mentioned before, but the very fact that the president of Lebanon was taken back to Saudi Arabia and put under house arrest and then let go, and there's been threats from Saudi Arabia towards Lebanon. So you have Lebanon, Syria and Iran as an axis of evil according to the West, Britain and NATO. And, you know, I think Saudi Arabia is there in a proxy war with Iran on behalf of the West and Israel. And finally, somebody mentioned about why Muslim brothers are killing other Muslim brothers. I mean, I believe that the Ummah, if that's a correct phrase, is being devastated, not because it suits the people of the Ummah itself. It's because it suits the people in Western Israel to divide and conquer the Muslims. And there's even talk now of balkanization, not just of Syria, but of Yemen, because there's calls, along with what happened in Sudan, to balkanize and separate Yemen into two separate countries.
Okay. Sir.
Thank you. I agree with all or most of what it said here. What I'm saying is, when a military coup happens in a country, most of the world stand against it. The last one, most of the world,
Not in
George.
Ukraine, they did.
Anyway, when the last one happened in Turkey, let's say most of the world stand against it. When a clear, frank military...
That's really not true
Okay,
either.
anyway, when a military
That's
coup...
two bad examples
When,
you gave.
George, when a military coup happened in my country in Yemen, most of the world are supporting the military coup. We all know, no one argue against this fact.
The coup against Hadi.
No, against Hadi, because Hadi was a legitimate elected president in 2012.
I'm just differentiating because there was also a coup against Ali Abdullah Saleh.
And I mean, I'm talking about the last
And
coup.
the Saudis supported that coup.
I'm talking about the last coup in 2014, September 2014, when the Houthis, supported by the Iranians, came from Saada and Amran and invaded Sana'a under the eyes of the whole world and the legitimate president being expelled to the Saudi Arabia.
You think the West was supporting them?
Sorry?
You think the West was supporting them?
Turn a blind eye. Anyway, when the president, let's compare it to the Syrian issue. Bashar al-Assad asked the Russians to interfere. He asked them frankly to help. Hadi asked the Saudis frankly to help because of what's going on in these two countries. So why in Syria it's legitimate what's going on, what's happening, but Hadi is not legitimate
most of
anyway.
The world doesn't think it's.
Of course, I'm not talking. No, don't.
I'll come to you later.
Let me finish.
Yeah.
So this is one point. Did anyone in this audience, this respected audience, know that the Houthis are number one classified in groups who are using child soldiers? 80 and children under 18s, 12 years old, 10 years old, is being employed by the Houthis to fight. Okay, leave it alone. Anyone of this audience, this respected audience, knows that the Houthis are using the landmine, who killed civilians as well, children, women. Landmine, sorry. Anyone in this hall, in this studio, knows that the Houthis are now making something like they are clearing everything in Sana'a, just using only one color, one way of thinking. Most of the media are shut down. Most of the journalists are now in Sana'a, either in jail or outside. No one knows about this. I'm not here to defend Saudi Arabia
Really?
or bin Salman. Really? Even if you are laughing, I'm not here to defend bin Salman. I'm Yemeni.
Not me that's laughing, it's the audience at home.
No, I'm saying I am a Yemeni, and I want you kindly to understand, not to accept my opinion, that there is an issue inside Yemen.
Sure.
Okay. Now, the last thing
I do accept that,
The last thing is, let's say that there is a war, there is war crimes, there are so many issues in Yemen. What's the solution? Peaceful solution. Okay. United Nations, Arab League, the Yemenis themselves, they agreed on 3 references for this peaceful solutions. The GCC's initiative, the outcomes of the national dialogue, and the resolutions of the United Nations. Now, who refused them? The Houthis. The Houthis are refusing them. In the last talk of the last representative of the United Nations to Yemen, Mr. Wald al-Sheikh, he said frankly that we were about to agree on a peaceful solution. Just in the last few minutes, the last few seconds, the Houthis refused. That was last week in the United Nations. Thank you.
I'll be right back with yet more of this. You're watching Kalimahorra. It's the final segment, so I need to get through as many speakers as possible. But last, from the Vox Pop, the voice of the people in London.
What do you think about Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince's visit to the UK recently?
أعتقد أنه يريد أن يدعم تحالفاته مع الغرب من أجل حمايته، وأعتقد أن اللاعب الأكبر هو بريطانيا وأمريكا، فلا بد من أن يسترضيهم ويشتري ولاءاتهم.
I heard he is coming. I saw a few glimpses of the Prime Minister welcoming him, and some of the big billboards where his name was there, he's arriving, stuff like that. And I read about few things in the newspapers, but that's to it. I think they signed few deals of maybe £1 billion, something like that.
Saudi visit definitely it will lead to the strengthened relationship between the Saudi Kingdom and the United Kingdom. But we wish that this visit could be given a chance to enhance the reforms in Saudi Arabia or enhance the further stability, which could be by the pressuring the Saudi Crown Prince, not giving him a green light to go ahead, or giving him more a military contract and so on.
Do you think that UK is complying, is helping with the war in Yemen by providing the Saudis with armament?
Oh, something like that. I have no clue. These are the connecting dots. I don't know. I have no idea.
وهذا الذي يسبب الضرر على بريطانيا، لأنها تدعم الإرهاب ومن يوصم بالإرهاب كالسعودية، وأيضا هناك عملية قتل كبير لليمنيين، وهذا سوف تكون له تداعيات كبيرة في المستقبل.
Well, that was the last of the voices of the people, but many more voices still here in the audience. I think you have the microphone,
right.
Doctor. Go ahead.
Regarding Yemen, it's very interesting subject, and you can do maybe 10 episodes, 15 episodes, and you will never finish. But regarding some of the points the gentleman mentioned,
My name is
Muhammad Afwan, can you tell me which planes or jets are roaring in the sky of Yemen? Tell me how many thousand rockets has been fired by these planes. I'll tell you, there are over 10,000 attacks has been launched by these planes. This is a statistic. Let me finish, please. You can answer later, please. Yeah, you can answer later if Allah. But I'm telling you, this is the truth, right? And you cannot ignore the background of the Houthis when they have been deprived, and 6 wars has been taken against them by Ali Abdullah Saleh and was supported by the Saudi in several times. And he manipulated the brother Muslimhood, Al-Islah it's called, who is led by Sheikh Zanadani, to involve them in internal war. And don't forget that Ali Abdullah Saleh, he's not only the fox, he was manipulating the whole country. I have a list of 150 political and non-political journalists has been assassinated during his time, and mysteriously they were all against him, and until now nobody knows who assassinated them. So don't forget that. He has in his pockets over 60 billion. And you tell me, let me tell you something, wait. He has a company called As-Saida Planes. This is a company built in cooperation. Let me finish, please.
No,
As-Saida is in cooperation with Al-Emirat. Okay. No. It's not true. Okay. Most of the land, I can precisely tell where all this land has been, he just confiscated it under the name of free zones. And I can tell you from Amran, from Al-Buraiqa, from all of that. Don't ask me where I'm from. Okay,
No, he's asking where's the money.
You're asking me where is Al-Buraiqa? Al-Buraiqa is no. I'm telling you on the south. This is the land in Bir Ahmad. Listen to me. In Bir. I'm telling you the land. I'm telling you all this in this area. No. Wait a minute. I'm telling you lands over there in Bir Ahmad. Listen to me. Listen to me. Just continue. Listen. Can you keep quiet? Listen to me. Look, all these lands.
No. Let me say something.
I'm telling you several areas. I'm naming several areas for you. I'm telling you in Bir Ahmad, in Buraiqa, in Adan, everywhere. All of this.
I don't want to.
Exactly.
Okay.
All right.
I don't want this discussion only to be about Yemen.
Okay.
I certainly don't want it to be about companies and pieces of land and so on that will not be understood or known by the audience.
Let's
take the gentleman in the middle row.
Thank you. My name is Nada Amle. I'm pretty sure that some of you agree about a UK government has the right to defend herself. In terms of, we are approaching a Brexit, and everyone is questioning UK government, why they're supporting or selling arms to Saudi Arabia. But the question I'm trying to ask you, if you can please allow me to ask it, about why does UK still continue supporting or supply Saudi regime? I think is about money, isn't it?
Of course.
Yes, okay, that leads me to my second question.
Britain's not the only country that does that, of course.
Of course, indeed, yeah, but we're just because we are in UK and we try to understand internally. Yeah. My second question is, UK is leaving Europe and UK looking for strategic partnership. And in order to have this as alliance, you need to be with Saudi Arabia or with the most richest country in the world. So as a government perspective, I'm pretty sure it's not about population or public, I would say they have right to think about their countries, their people, to contribute positively in this country. So I read an article in Guardian says criticizing UK or criticizing Saudi Arabia is not helpful for UK. So because you've been, I think, in Parliament, and I think you have 3,000 years of wisdom, while I'm present just 2 years maybe, or as you said, an enthusiastic Amuta. So please, can you just let me know
I'm not as old as I look, by the way.
Okay.
Look, Britain has legitimate interests in trading with all countries. I don't object to leaders of Saudi Arabia or Russia or North Korea coming to Britain. I think that talking is better than fighting. And it's inevitable that a country as rich as Saudi Arabia, with the history that was referred to, effectively created by British imperialism, it's inevitable that there will be a relationship. I myself have visited Saudi Arabia many times. I've met 2, if not 3 kings of Saudi Arabia. So I don't hate them. I certainly don't hate their people. My followers, I have 500,000 followers on Facebook. The second biggest group of them are from Saudi Arabia. So quite a lot of people in Saudi Arabia quite like me. But the reality is that a dreadful war is being fought. There's mass carnage, death and destruction being created. Not just, as the young lady said, by weapons that we are selling, that's bad enough. But in fact, we have military officers in the command and control cells, as do the United States and others, who are actually targeting. And we know some of the targets: funerals, weddings, ceramic factories, and so on. So there's like literally blood on our hands in Yemen, not just blood on our hands because we're selling the weapons. I need to take this gentleman and then finally you, Professor. Sir.
We have a bitter conflict there. Deaths and destruction, diseases. People of Yemen are suffering beyond belief. This war should come to an end. It is time for the world to bring this war to an end for 3 reasons. Saudi Arabia itself is losing £200 million every single day. It's unaffordable. Saudi Arabia is also losing the proxy war. Sana'a, Baghdad, Damascus, Beirut, and Doha are all residing in the Iranian camp. With all this money and the hard work, they have lost. What needs to be done is, in the interest of humanity, the blockade needs to be lifted and a ceasefire to be agreed. I'm a bit sad about people talking about small things. What needs to be done? The war in Yemen started, the sweeping Arab Spring had brought down Ali Abdullah. His deputy came into power. Ali Abdullah, behind the scenes, he was a very powerful man who united Yemen and built institutions and did a very good thing. You must know that the ostensible purpose of the Saudi intervention was to take control of Yemen. I must tell you the truth. Saudis are behind the scenes settling an account with Yemen because Yemen has a long-standing claim of territories missing, which Ali Abdullah fought very hard to get these territories back from the kingdom. So they were settling an account with them, and he paid the price. I think what needs to be done, the blockade needs to be lifted. These human beings who are suffering on the ground, as the human rights mention it, activists mention it, needs to be helped. If the Saudi Arabia do not get its feet out of Yemen, it would lead to its collapse. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Professor Al-Masri, I must say I share that analysis very much. If you must contradict it, do. But I would prefer if you ended the show by talking about Saudi Arabia in general, because we've had a lot of talk about Yemen. So unless you must add something, kindly give us, just to close the show, the big picture.
No, I prefer to close with something from Britain.
Okay.
Check the Hansards of 1922 when Churchill said, I am amazed that some members of this respectable house are upset that we are gassing savages, he meaning the gassing of the Kurds in Iraq. So for the sister who thinks on high morality, forget about that. Politics, British politics, since several centuries does not work this way. Secondly, I heeded that you can read by yourself, still in the Hansards. In the 80s, there was a discussion in the public broadcasting system at PBS. I was in America, and there was a discussion. There was a poor Russian journalist who was squeezed, and there was Macmillan, the old Macmillan himself, the ex-prime minister. At the time, he was before his death, and they were discussing what's happening with the Iraqi-Iranian war. And he was gloating about Russia being squeezed in Afghanistan at the time, that's mid-80s. and the Russians will say, you are mistaken, this will come to haunt you again, etc. But what is interesting, what Macmillan said, yes, the war in Iraq is troublesome, etc., and there are many bloodshed, but there is something significant there that we should not neglect. We give them weapons to destroy themselves, but they cannot rebuild again. We were going to rebuild, and we make money. I concluded that. I have nothing more to say.
Well, I'm grateful to you, to all of you. It's been a heated discussion, but I hope there was some light as well as heat, even though these issues are deep and, of course, divisive, and people have strong feelings about them on either side. That's why this show is called Kalima Hurra, because we, within the exigencies of squeezing quite a large audience into now a much shorter show, I hope that we have done that. You have all been speaking about the Arab end of this. So let me finish as a British public personality, conclude by talking about Britain. I believe that it is deeply demeaning, it is utterly undignified that a country like Britain should be running after to kiss the posterior of any man just because he's rich. And when the kissing of the posterior is really about getting the man that we are kissing to give us money in exchange for weapons that will then kill small children and hungry people and set the poorest country in the entire Arab world further aflame and ablaze. I think in the long, dismal history, shameful history of Britain in the Middle East, we are writing a new and lower chapter in Britain's relations with the Arab world. I've been George Galloway. You've been a great audience. This has been Kalima Hurra.